Alright, Schlockmeister fans, we're going to watch a rarity here. David Naughton in I Desire. Let's check it out. Here's a prostitute, LA's finest.
I want to ask you something. I've got a little personal matter I'd like to discuss with you. Get in.
So he takes his hooker to a Fleabag motel, or actually it's a nicer hotel. And then this happens. We don't see it, but it's a vampire. Spoiler. Our friend David Naughton works at the corner.
On Hollywood Boulevard and winds up minus in the blood department.
What do you mean minus?
What I mean is whoever killed him drained him of all his blood.
So anyway, at the coroner's office, a priest comes in to give some last rites to a stiff. And our buddy David, who plays David, by the way, just like he played in American Werewolf in London, lets him in. And then the guy is going to disappear before he leaves, or before he has a chance to watch him leave.
What happens is I find out the guy's not Catholic, he's Jewish.
The priest?
No, King. Milton King. His rabbi's waiting outside. So I go looking for the priest, and he's gone.
Anyway, that's his girlfriend, Cheryl. They're moving in together.
No, I'm serious. For someone who's never been married, never lived with anyone, you're taking this awfully well.
I think we may have a vampire in town.
This is a cop.
Right.
That was a joke.
Later on, David spots that fake priest. And he goes charging after him. This is the hospital, I believe. This is in the hospital. Cheryl works in the hospital, by the way. David doesn't find that priest, but he do hear the commotion in that room.
She's got a pulse.
And whoever that was that attacked him leapt out a window.
Milton King. There was the hooker, the motel on Hollywood Boulevard, everything.
What about the blood?
What blood? I told you it's just like Milton. Whoever killed him drained him of all his blood.
David thought he heard something, so he goes to check on the stiffs, and what the hell? Just a joke. In the hospital room, David gets attacked. Those are vampire fangs. Doesn't get him, though, and he gets away. In fact, she leaps from a window again. David spots the fake priest again. This time he's able to tackle him.
I just want to ask some questions. It's me. You remember me? At the coroner's office and then at the hospital?
He's a vampire chaser.
You know, don't you? About you, about her. You don't know anything about me, but you know about her.
It's not true. Nobody believes in vampires, not real ones.
That's their greatest strength. The fact that no one believes. Destroyer.
I don't know it. Destroyer.
Killer. Once you discover a vampire, you have to destroy it, Mike.
So now he cruises Hollywood Boulevard looking for hookers to interview.
Hi.
Hi, can I talk to you a minute?
Have you got something in mind?
But he picked the wrong one.
$30?
You're under arrest.
Cheryl's not too happy, had a bad bailing him out.
I almost wish you were after a hooker. I'd hate it, but at least I could deal with it. I can't deal with this, David, with this obsession.
His
He
cop
told me
friend.
that he'd been hunting her across the country. Now, I asked him where he's been most recently, and they said Tucson, and before that, Fort Worth. Have there been any similar murders there in the last month or so?
Yes.
They were married. All of them. Married and cheating on their wives. So in other words, for a female vampire, they're the perfect victims. Men whose souls can be easily penetrated because they aren't righteous.
Cheryl's done.
I think this is something you have to work out on your own.
She's leaving him. He's back out looking for hookers again.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
This is Mona, Cheryl's coworker at the hospital.
Do you remember me? Mona from the hospital.
Anyway, Mona takes David back to her place and they have some drinks.
On Melrose.
What's this all
Can
about?
I ask you something?
Anything.
What were you doing out there tonight?
I can be everything you ever wanted.
Are you trying to figure out what Mona is? It's not too difficult at this point. You guessed it, she's the head vampire. He excuses himself to take a whiz, and when he's up there, he finds that vampire hunter guy. Looks like he didn't quite make it.
What a pity. Too bad our little fantasy had to end so soon.
Well, she chases him around the apartment a little bit.
You're an old and shriveled woman!
Now, she's fallen out of windows a couple times in this movie, but apparently when she drops this time, she dies. Or remember the phony priest vampire killer? He's been vamped too. But after the very briefest of struggles, his cop friend, Detective Jerry Van Ness, comes in. Obviously, we have two people dead here. David's involved, and he does find a coffin full of earth.
Did you kill him? Both of them? Why?
They were vampires.
It's basically...
If I sign that, I'm signing a lie.
You're signing the facts. The physical evidence will corroborate this statement.
saying he's innocent.
Will allow you to leave here in 5 minutes and never come back. You said you were innocent, didn't you?
Yes.
So faced with the prospect of going to jail for murder, or signing that thing, he chooses to sign, of course. The vampire story never comes out, and he and Cheryl make up. But as they walk away, we see this guy who was watching them. Alright, let's talk about I, Desire. So, this is a movie that I taped off of Black Stars, around 2002 maybe, I don't know. It's the first time I'd seen it, or actually I don't think it was the first time I'd seen it. I always had this memory of seeing a film when I was a little kid at my Uncle Tom's house, in Merrill, Wisconsin, by the way, and sometime in the early 80s. And I remember like a guy being chased by a vampire in a living room, and I think that was this movie. So, there you go. Anyway, David Naughton, fresh off of American Werewolf in London, now does a vampire movie, made for television, by the way, in 1982, and he is dating this woman named Cheryl. They moved in together. She works in a hospital. He's a coroner, or works in the coroner's office, I guess, and a body comes in that has been drained of blood, which is confusing, of course, obviously, vampires, right? So anyway, a priest comes in to like give the last rites, goes in by the body. David lets him in, says, do your thing, I'll come get you later. When he comes back, the priest is gone. He has no explanation as to what happened. He finds the priest later on at the hospital, chases him, loses him, but then all of a sudden they hear this big commotion in one of the hospital rooms where inside there is this vampire woman attacking two people. When they finally get into the room, the vampire jumps out the window and is gone. Later on, David himself gets attacked by the vampire in another hospital room. He spends a lot of time in this hospital, and he does some searching and some investigating. He figures out there might be a real vampire on the loose here. Another body comes in, same deal. It was a guy who had picked up a prostitute, took her to a hotel, and then found this body later on drained of blood. So he buys, like I said, vampire books to read about it, but we can see that it's a picture of Nosferatu in one of those books. He tells his cop friend about it, who thinks he's crazy. And then he decides to go on Hollywood Boulevard to look for hookers to interview some, to see if they have any information. He ends up getting arrested for solicitation because they thought he was looking for a prostitute to buy for sex, which wasn't the case, obviously. He gets out of jail. Eventually, he goes back to Hollywood Boulevard again and picks up Mona, who is one of Cheryl's coworkers, by the way. So he knew her. She takes him back to his place, but this time Cheryl's broken up with him because she thought he was buying a hooker or whatever. She couldn't deal with all this shit. So, actually, she didn't think he was buying a hooker. She knew why, but nonetheless, she couldn't deal with it. Anyway, he goes to Mona's house, and Mona seduces him. They kiss. They're making out. And then she goes upstairs. She comes back, and she's a vampire. And then David realizes it at this point. And he finds that vampire killer guy, that fake priest who he'd tracked down earlier. He did manage to meet that fake priest and learn that he's a vampire killer. He gets into a confrontation with the vampire on the balcony, and then she jumps off and falls to her death, which I thought was odd because she jumped out of 2 very high buildings before without any issue, but this time it killed her, I guess. Goes back in the house or the apartment, and then the vampire killer has vamped out himself. And after a brief struggle of about 9 seconds, he manages to stake that guy and kills him. His cop friend comes over. There's a double homicide, a double murder here. He says it was self-defense, this and that. So he doesn't quite believe the vampire story, but then he kind of does. But he makes him sign this thing saying, I was attacked, it was self-defense, blah, blah, blah. The evidence will corroborate what he says. So he can walk away a free man, or he can stick to his vampire story and be arrested for double murder. He signs. Cheryl makes up with him. They walk away. We see a vampire in the last scene watching them. End of story. So anyway, that is I Desire. Strange little relic of a film. It's not very well known. It's not available on VHS or DVD. It's just a very rare film. I'm glad I managed to pick this up off of Black Stars. Now, there are a few DVD-Rs out there floating around, so if you're looking hard enough for it, you can find it. This is some homemade box art we made for it here right in my house. So, yeah, not a whole lot of information about I Desire out there, but it's not a bad little flick. It's always nice to see David Naughton. Like I said, he made this literally right after American Werewolf in London, so it's a very similar character. He's got some of the same mannerisms, and who doesn't love American Werewolf in London, right? So we went from werewolf to vampire. So check it out. If you can find this thing, I don't know if it's streaming somewhere or not. It's kind of rare, but check it out if you can. Let me know what you think about it. I Desire. Watch it. Bye.